I'm Sarah, I'm part of the Cambridge group and have been for a long time, but I'm also a trainer, as Lisbeth is indeed. And I'm part of the trainers working group. Now the one thing that all trainers should do, that I'll confess right away I haven't done, is bring evaluation forms. I haven't brought evaluation forms. But please do give me feedback, because it's the first time that I've done this workshop, or part of this workshop. So we really want information fed back, and what's useful and what isn't, so we can do that informally. My knowledge of the Human Rights Act is, I have to say, very limited. I'm not a lawyer. If you really want to know the ins and outs and debate it with lawyers, then I hope that you're coming to the regional meeting, where you're going to have real experts, Julian Huppert, the MP, who's very involved with human rights, and someone from Feminist University. Yes, so they will be the real experts. So if you've got any awkward questions, I should just say, well, defer it to them. And really this workshop was devised with two purposes in mind. And I think tonight I'm just going to focus on mainly on one of them. One reason is that the Human Rights Act is in danger, as you probably know. There's a lot of talk among MPs about, we're going to have our own Bill of Rights, etc. We want to abolish the Human Rights Act. The Human Rights Act is a huge problem and the source of lots of evil, and we're going to do our own thing by having the Bill of Rights. I'll say a little bit about that afterwards, but there will be, one reason for the workshop is a campaign is planned on that, sort of defending the Human Rights Act. Up to now, Amnesty has actually done a lot of work. You might have heard of the Brighton Convention on the European Court of Human Rights that took place fairly recently when Britain was actually president of the Council of Europe. And there were very few modifications made, but lobbying by Amnesty and lots of others, and in fact some groups, the Derby Group and another one, made strong representations, and they've got lawyers in their groups, so that the modifications were really quite reasonable and small. So they will go on doing it anyway. A campaign is planned, but not exactly scheduled. So that's not the side that I plan to emphasise a lot, because they will put out their own campaign materials and things will have moved on by then, though I can talk a bit about the dangers and so on. The second reason for doing it, which I think is urgent, is that the debasing of the phrase human rights. We used to stand proud, we still stand proud saying we defend human rights. It's what we're about human rights. But increasingly people are using human rights in a pejorative way. And I remember a job interview I had a while ago where I was asked a question, I said something about Amnesty and human rights, and I was told, I'm much more interested in responsibilities than rights. People go on too much about the human rights. But there's lots of criticism of it, and we need to be ready to answer, or to have something to say. So that's what I plan, if that's okay with you, to concentrate on, because I think it's something we're meeting all the time right now. Okay, so I'm going to start in true Amnesty Workshop fashion with a very short quiz, which you can do together. Okay, so just a few questions, multiple choice. There you are, you can do it together or separately, but just get some of the facts. The first one, in order to bring rights home, what's meant by that? Any, yes, which one did you choose for that? A. Yes, absolutely, A.
That's right.
It certainly doesn't give the British Parliament the final say on human rights matters. That's one of the big complaints from some quarters about it. British rights to British people, these are more than British rights. These are, it stems from, after the war, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the European Convention on Human Rights. So it is wider than British rights. But it did allow people in the UK to enforce their human rights in UK courts. Before then, one always had to appeal to Strasbourg for, if you're appealing for your human rights, but now it's enshrined in British law. So British law courts, through the Human Rights Act, can, make judgments on human rights issues. And it's only then as an appeal from that, in the last resort, that you appeal to Strasbourg. So much more of the human rights judgments just take place in the UK instead of always being referred to Strasbourg.
I had thought that the courts couldn't actually enforce it. They could only flag up.
British courts.
Yes, that they can't. Is that not right?
Well, they can make a judgment, but then it's subject to appeal.
Right. Right.
So it is in British law, and they can make a judgment, but then it can go further to Strasbourg, to the European Court of Human Rights.
Right.
And then that is binding. But the impact of it is that much more is being decided in British courts, I think. So it's made it British law, if you like, enshrined it in British law.
So if somebody appeals, are they appealing then to the Higher Court of Strasbourg?
Yes, they can do that.
Yeah.
Indeed. And then the judgment is binding. But
Do they get any costs of them?
any costs?
Yes.
I don't know about that. Yes. I'm sure that they can be awarded costs.
Yeah.
But actually, this idea that we're having all these decisions made in Strasbourg at the European Court of Human Rights, only 2.4% of cases that go there are British. And about 90% of them reinforce what the UK courts have said, or more than 90%, I think.
Yeah.
So actually the number of times when the European Court of Human Rights contradicts what the UK courts say is minuscule. Of course, those are the ones we hear about, but it is minuscule. Most of the time they are reinforcing what the UK courts have said. Okay, number 2. Who does it apply to? C, not A. It is C, yes. And this is another misconception. It's all tied up with the EU, the European Union, and being ruled by the European Union, being ruled by Germany, and so on. It is the Council of Europe. It has nothing to do with the EU at all. I know it's Strasbourg, they both have their, one headquarters in Strasbourg, the court is in Strasbourg, but it is the Council of Europe. So those 47 countries. And it was set up, the court was set up with the Council of Europe after the war, to protect human rights and democracy. But it's nothing to do with the EU.
So what is the Council of Europe?
Well, the Council of Europe is this much wider body. It includes just about everybody in every country in Europe.
Right.
Yes, and they formed their own. It's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and they formed it and formed a court to enforce it. But they do lots of things to do with trade and all kinds of things. And actually, I think the foundation of the Council, the foundation of the EU, a lot of that was economic. The economic side, whereas the Council of Europe, I think, rather more idealistic place for dialogue and peace and so on. So yes, it is the Council of Europe.
The two countries that, there's been a lot of publicity recently from the Tory party saying, the cases take endless time to have a judgment on. And that is a reason not to continue with this. But as I understand it, the two countries that have provided most of the cases are Russia and Turkey.
Right, yes.
And about 90% of the cases that go to Strasbourg.
Right.
And that highlights the fact that it isn't, of course, the EU, as you say, it's the Council of Europe.
Yes,
Because
yes.
the two biggest number,
Yes.
the largest number of cases are Turkey and Russia.
Yes. I mean, I just did a quick survey on recent cases, and there it was, you know, huge range, and, you know, not that dominance, but maybe it was a bit edited. I don't know. But, yeah, and so far as delays go, that is one of the big complaints. It takes a long time. And the Viking Convention did adjust that, actually, because it sped up some of the time intervals. So it should be a bit better. It is an issue. It is an issue. Timing, definitely. Okay, so which rights are not protected by the Human Rights Act? A, yes, that's right. And in fact, I've come aware of lack of time and also wanting to, you know, not to lecture you, but give you as much information as possible. I've actually got a handout of the rights that are... Well, this is the UK Human Rights Act, yes, those are the rights that are covered. So, basically, it is not you know, food, clothing, housing. 15 fundamental rights. It's not as broad as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Yeah, that's why I was getting
Yeah.
slightly confused, because that does cover things like that,
It
doesn't
does,
Yeah.
it does, and of course Amnesty has moved into looking at some of those areas, but this has stayed with a narrower definition. Basically, apart from education, which I think is rather it's sort of watered down, it's not a very strong stipulation on that, but doesn't really cover economic, social and cultural rights.
What does the right to peaceful enjoyment of possessions imply?
A difficult one, yes. I mean, this is well, I think you have to look at it in terms that it's really enforceable on public bodies. Okay, so this act, I suppose, your sort of forced evictions and so on would come under that. Because it is the duty of public bodies, that's the force of it. So it's a duty of government, but further than that, any national you know, public body, such as, you know, the health service, local authorities, etc., are all subject to it and expected to abide by it. And then you can appeal against actions by them. So yes, yeah, forced evictions and that kind of thing, I think would come under that. So who has to adhere to it? I've just answered that one, really. I think, haven't I? It's B. Yes. Parliament, the courts and public bodies. It doesn't cover individuals and companies. It is actually on those public bodies. It is their duty. So it's all about obligations of the state or state bodies. So schools, hospitals, local councils. It does include the Prime Minister. So David Cameron is right.
So it wouldn't include a bank, for instance?
No.
Interesting.
Yes. So there might be pressure, but yes, you can't appeal against a bank, unfortunately.
Is that the same with newspapers, though? Because people were trying to sort of say that their human rights had been violated against the news, in that whole news of the world thing, weren't they?
Well, yes, and you do have the whole
right
right
to
to
privacy
individual
and
rights and privacy and so on, but unless, well, you see, that's why, I don't know, would the BBC be caught by it? Probably not quite, because it's meant to be independent.
Yes, it's
No,
not
I don't think you can do it directly. You can use it to put pressure.
But it's not a direct thing.
Yes.
against-
And of course you can say, well, the government has a responsibility to, you know, just as we appeal to governments, even when it's non-government agencies that have done things in countries, because they are responsible for the safety and
Overseeing,
security.
yeah.
Yes, so you would get at them through the parliament. But I mean, banks and corporations are so difficult because of them being multinational. Really hard. So 5. Oh, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Well, anybody?
Yes.
Well, yes, it does. Yes, it is C, actually. The devolved administrations also have extra human rights requirements. I think because they were set up later that they've enshrined a bit more in there. So yes, they are bound by the Human Rights Act, but they've got a little bit more in there.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand that.
No, I haven't.
Because they were set up, because the parliaments were set up,
Yes, yeah.
um,
Well,
perhaps isn't that important actually.
right. Laws passed by devolved bodies must comply with the Human Rights Act, or the legislation is invalid. So, they can't start anything that doesn't comply with the Human Rights Act. So it is stronger protection, a little bit stronger than it is in the UK. So it's a technicality, really.
Yeah.
But yes, they have to comply to. And which of those in question 6 are not protected by the Human Rights Act?
Is it A?
It is A, yes, because it's only in the area of jurisdiction of those 47 countries. Okay, so someone abroad is not affected, but of course non-citizens within the area of jurisdiction, it does affect as well. So asylum seekers, victims of crime, yes.
So a tie in Britain. would be-
A tie in Britain, but not a Britain in tie. Yes, yeah, because you can't enforce it because it's under the government there. Right. Okay, so that's a bit about it. On the back, I photocopied this diagram, which I hope you understand. I actually struggle with it. This is one of my points about this workshop. And you've got the European Union as completely separate, which is great. Someone feeling his rights have been violated, appeals to the UK courts and then up to the Council of Europe. And then if the Council of Europe and the European Court of Human Rights takes a decision, the British Parliament, the UK Parliament, has to enforce it. They are bound by that. What I'm not entirely sure is the return arrow can decide what to do. I'm not entirely clear about that. But anyway.
It's about whether they then have to turn it into new law or something like that.
Right, yes, yeah. Oh yes, and the review of legislation, etc. But basically you can appeal to UK courts and then on to Strasbourg if you want, and then it's binding on the UK government. So, there we are.
So this business of giving the vote to prisoners in this country,
Yes.
which is coming to a vote
This
soon.
is what I was going to major on.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, we'll come to that because I thought that is the most topical question. I think it's tomorrow it's being debated, isn't it? So, absolutely topical. In fact, yes, I was just going to a couple of things before that, just to set it, set some of the concerns. Human rights and the European Court of Human Rights and the Human Rights Act, there is a lot of hostility to it, which has been whipped up by certain people. But actually, using the right language and explaining, it is possible to get to support for it. 2 surveys last year. One was by YouGov, which asked people, do you support the Human Rights Act and the European Court of Human Rights? Okay, and 75% said no. No, we want to abolish it. Particularly, we want our own Bill of Rights. We do. This keyword of Europe, we don't want Europe controlling us, etc. But then the same year, Liberty put out a survey saying, do you want a law which protects freedom and rights in the UK? And 93% it said yes. There's a real mismatch there, depending on how you phrase it. That is precisely what the Human Rights Act does. In fact, this thing about bringing it home in UK courts, and actually making it our own, it's more British than it was. So if you want a law protecting freedom and rights in the UK, and 93% of people do, you've got it. But it is that mentions particularly the European Court of Human Rights. It's difficult. We will look, we'll look at the question of prisoners, but before that, if I can find it, I just wanted to give you, there's so many shocking examples of this. And, you know, I don't want this to turn into a moan about the media, but appalling misinformation goes out. Does any of you remember, this is a while ago actually, it was 2006, the Dennis Nielsen issue and human rights? Okay.
What was that about?
Well, I'm going to read you a sentence, 2 sentences from the Daily Mail to tell you what it's about. Okay? The Human Rights Act 2000 allowed serial killer, in bold, in capitals, Dennis Nielsen to win a case to look at hardcore pornographic magazines in his cell. He successfully argued that existing rules which allowed him to look at soft porn magazines infringed his human rights. And then we have the Sun's version. Serial killer Dennis Nielsen, 60, received hardcore gay porn in jail thanks to human rights laws. He argued it was his right to information and freedom of expression. The prison service agreed to allow that right to Nielsen, convicted of killing 6 young men. You don't remember the case?
Yeah.
If you come across it, that's what you would have come across. But does anyone know the truth of it? Actually, Dennis Nielsen was refused gay pornographic magazines in prison. He did get hold of lawyers and ask them to put his case because it infringed his human rights, and was told he had no case. And that was it. It never actually got judged by the courts because he thought, you know, it was judged that he didn't have a case. And yet here are the Daily Mail and the Sun saying, thanks to the Human Rights Act, this man is going. It didn't go anywhere, the case. So misinformation, I mean, downright lies. And of course the case blows up and you never hear about what the end is. Actually, it's all thrown out.
So it went to Strasbourg. And
No, it didn't go.
Didn't go anywhere.
No, this was in the British court.
But he didn't have the right to go to Strasbourg. Or,
Well, I think he didn't because it was thrown out by the human rights, and I don't think he went further. So that was it.
It went to court.
It was deemed not to be worthy of a case. I think the case was put by the lawyers to the court, and they said no, doesn't come within the Human Rights Act.
right.
So complete misinformation, but there is a lot of this going on. A lot.
But it would come under his rights to have
The right to ask.
I mean, whether or not it came under the Human Rights Act, I would have thought, I mean, you could came under habeas corpus for that.
Yes.
And therefore, I would have thought he would have had a case.
Yeah.
Having been told he hasn't got a case is almost as bad as...
Well, but he could appeal over the prison governor's head. I think that was it. You know, he didn't have to accept what the prison governor said.
But he didn't take it further. Is that what you...
Well, I think it was put to the court, is there a case? So he did have lawyers who put it to the courts, but they judged that there was, yes.
It seems very odd, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So in other
it
words,
does.
if the lawyers say you don't have a case in the English courts,
Right.
that's it. You can't go
Well,
further.
perhaps he could have done. I don't know. But anyway, it all...
So he didn't have very good lawyers. Maybe.
Well, I don't know. But, you know, it simply wasn't... Yeah.
Obviously what they said was wrong, yes, and that's the important
Yes,
point.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but this is what people are reading every day. I mean, I heard something that the Daily Mail website is by far the most popular, has the most hits and so on, putting out things like this. Okay, so shall we get, I was going to do a bit of a discussion on issues that come up, but since you mentioned business, no, let's get straight into the question of, because this is so current, Votes for prisoners. Okay, this is absolutely up to the minute. Now, can we establish, or shall I give you? Perhaps I shall give you that.
Is it about active or passive voting rights? So can you, I was surprised by this, being Dutch. In the Netherlands, prisoners do have the right to vote,
Yes.
but they don't have the right to stand.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. You mean,
No, this is the right to. Simply the right to
yeah,
vote.
it's about voting.
Or the other way.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Okay, so the facts of it. You know that according to the ECHR, the European Court for Human Rights, so the Convention on Human Rights, prisoners, you know, it's discrimination not to allow prisoners to vote. So, I mean, what's all the publicity about? What have you heard about it? In Cameron's attitude and so on?
He said no, not while he's in charge.
He said, no, not in my government. And he has also said the very thought of it makes him sick.
Okay, delicate stuff.
Sorry?
You say physically sick.
He did. I think I'm physically sick. I have the quotation here from the
Not
Telegraph.
just mentally sick.
Yes, yes, that's right.
And yes, he calls for the big society to be very inclusive.
Right,
On that statement,
Yeah.
he's being exclusive.
absolutely. But I mean, what is he up to here? He's playing the anti-Europe card again, isn't he? Are there no votes? I mean, okay, if prisoners had votes, there would be votes in prisoners, but not significant ones. And so he's simply playing the anti-Europe card, the, gosh, we can't let criminals vote, that goes against everything British and everything we stand for.
Well,
I think it's
I would be inclined to agree with Cameron.
Yes, I mean, lots of people do. Lots of people do.
You see,
I didn't even know they didn't have the right to vote.
Yes,
Yeah.
I thought prisoners did have the right to vote. till I heard
and
He
you know,
wasn't to be, not to come a supporter, but he wasn't saying no, definitely not happening, wasn't he? I mean, they are looking into how it can.
they're having to, but he said no prisoners are going to have votes in my parliament, in my term of governance. And you can see the point. Now, I Googled this at the weekend, and the first site that came up was a BBC site. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll see what it is. And there was a video clip on there. I don't know if any of you have seen John Hurst. Has anyone heard of John Hurst?
The acting.
No, I'm afraid not. No, there's a video clip of this person called John Hurst, who I fear we might hear quite a lot more of. He is a convicted lifer. He might actually be out by now. But anyway, a very, very nasty murder. And the video clip is an interview that Andrew Neil did of John Hurst. And my goodness, this guy John Hurst is unpleasant. And that interview, and this is what people see, and as I say, this came up first on Google when I did it. There's this interview, and Andrew Neil, particularly for Andrew Neil, was being remarkably calm throughout. John Hurst was so cocky and full of himself, and he is suing. He's threatening to sue because of being deprived of the right to vote for all the years when he was on the life sentence. And he was extremely unpleasant. He was very personally abusive to Andrew Neil, commenting on, in a very unpleasant way, on his appearance, and jeering at him. And this is, this is what you said. My goodness, no, we can't. And Andrew Neil is, of course, quoting really grim details of the murder he committed, where he left the woman dying while he went off to make a cup of tea in the kitchen next door, etc. So the whole thing was absolutely made you shudder. And you thought, no way should anyone like that have the vote. And you can see the point. And this guy, again, it's compensation culture, everyone's saying it's compensation culture. He's suing and he wants to get lots of money for not having it, not having the vote. But what David Cameron doing is he's completely inviting this by giving a blanket no.
Because I don't think he was getting a blanket no. I think he is saying that there is some.
Yeah.
It's more complicated than yes, they
Yes,
or they
yes,
don't,
yes.
and there is some interpretation, kind of legal interpretation. So I don't think it's quite fair to say that he's saying.
No, he did at one point. He did at one point.
Contravene,
Yes.
I'm going to completely.
He did at one point, but the bill, they are suggesting a bill that is going to get, and of course Parliament did vote against it. Their constituents are going to be up in arms. It's not in interest to vote for prisoners to have the vote. But the proposed bill actually is to ask them to decide whether all prisoners should have the vote, which is so in many countries.
Although I've just checked it, in the Netherlands they actually do have the right to take away somebody's right to vote if they have been committed a very awful crime.
Absolutely.
You have to be in prison. If you're in prison longer than a year, you can actually lose it. So that has changed in the last year.
So what all the debate is about, are we going to allow people like John Hurst to have the vote? But there are lots and lots of interim measures. And actually some countries do allow all prisoners to have the vote. Some allow only prisoners who are there for up to 3 years to have the vote, and if you've got a sentence of more than 3 years you can't vote. And a lot of them have this discretion where, being deprived of your vote, the judge can deprive you of your vote as an extra punishment. So there are lots of ways of playing it, and actually the suggested bill, I think, is do you want no prisoners to have the vote, continue as it is? Do you want prisoners with sentences under 6 months to be allowed to vote? Or 4 years? I think the reason for 4 years is, the average life of a parliament. If you're going to be out during the time, if you're going to be out before the next election, then you should vote for someone on the outside. And there are lots of arguments about rehabilitation and actually giving them a stay in the community.
But the issue is really that if they take a decision we don't like, are we
Yes.
what happens then? And one can see the point, because we have democratically, well, it isn't at all democratic, is it? The whole thing is dreamed up by these remote people in the Council of Europe. We have no, I don't know who even represents us on it, and they have the power to tell us what to do. I think that's what really alienates people.
Yes, I think that's so, but there are certain fundamental principles that I think that we would sign up to. Yes, if you look at the judgment, I was actually very impressed when I looked at recent judgments by the European Court of Human Rights, actually at how reasoned they were and how often, they made a sort of compromise decision. I was quite impressed by it. But the really worrying thing is that this stand, we are not going to have them deciding. Our Parliament says no, so we're not going to accept the European Court of Human Rights. I think one of the biggest worries is what's going to follow from that. Governments in other countries are going to say, well, we don't agree with it either. We're going to opt out. We don't agree with it. It opens the door, really, to governments saying, oh, we're going to pick and choose. If David Cameron does this, there are going to be a lot of cases where governments are going to say, well, he opted out, so we're going to opt, we're torturing our people, and, well, actually that's just the way we do things, or whatever.
But what is the penalty if we didn't go along with this, or it was partially, we said we would allow the vote for people with a sentence
But
of less
that's
than 6
fine.
months.
That's fine. We can do that. We can define. The only complaint the European Court of Human Rights has against us is a complete blanket
Oh, I see.
ban. No vote for prisoners ever. We can put in the mildest thing, or we can, we can put in, 6 months, or we can put in, a clause with a strong recommendation to judges, and you will add this as an extra sentence or whatever. It is just this, we will not consider.
I find that odd because I thought the nature of human rights was they were inalienable.
Yes.
So you don't
That's
make
right.
a judgment on that
Yeah.
person can have and that can't. So
Well,
either
yeah.
a prisoner,
Mm.
it's an inalienable human
Yes.
right because they're a human being,
Mm.
regardless whether they're a prisoner or not,
Yes.
or it's not.
Yeah.
So to kind of
Well, it is,
and then
yes.
Because you've already lost your right to freedom when you're in prison anyway,
Yeah,
aren't you?
exactly.
So you're under a different situation than somebody who hasn't committed a crime.
not if we talk about human rights. I mean,
Well,
that's their argument, saying it's a human right which everybody should have, regardless of whether they're in prison or not.
Yeah.
So therefore,
Yes.
why you're in prison? Why are you going to give some prisoners the vote and some not?
Yeah.
can't
I mean, I think that's a logical thing about when you're going to be on the outside. Because, I mean, a prison, okay, it's governed by Parliament and the courts and so on, but it is a very different environment, isn't it? You're sort of under a subsection of prison law. You're not on the outside, as it were.
Well,
But
you've
once
lost
you
your
are,
right to
that's-
liberty,
that's-
haven't you?
So,
You've lost your
Yes,
right to liberty.
you forfeited it by your
Yes.
crimes, I
Mm.
suppose.
But you forfeited your probably right to democracy as well, haven't you? Right
well, exactly. Yes,
to
exactly.
the vote, really.
Yes, yes, and you can say that, absolutely. But then, you're released 3 months later and you're out or whatever. It is debatable, but I'm really worried about this blanket. And worried about the, some of the publicity about it. Here's another.
I believe when you look at women's prisoners, most women are in prison for not paying council tax bills, etc.
Yeah, there are a lot of
So then the debate is they shouldn't be in prison, isn't it? That's the debate
Well,
to
that's
have,
the
not the
debate.
debate.
Yes, well, I would certainly go along with that. Yes, here we are. Here's some more publicity about it, things that are being said. So. Okay. Okay, how are we doing? I don't know when you normally end. Sorry? Are you alright? Okay. So prisoner voting, a big issue at the moment, and we did get an extension for it, and the hope is that if they appear to be raising the debate again, that we'll get an extension, because the extension runs out on Friday. Okay, the extension we've been given to comply with it runs out on Friday.
Is Amnesty taking a position on it then?
I don't know that they have got involved in this one.
I don't think they have.
Directly.
I don't think so.
So I don't quite understand it. So if we said, or Parliament voted on this and said, there isn't upheld what we perceive as David Cameron's view that under no circumstances will anybody who's committed a crime and serving a prison sentence has the right to vote. What is the penalty? Is there a penalty? What?
I don't think it's been
Has
tested
any
yet.
other
That
country-
confrontation.
There was a speech during the last debate.
Right,
It might have been the Attorney General,
right.
but I can't remember. But he made it, he argued that we were really obliged to come up with some decision about certainly limiting the right to vote within the prison population, that there has to be some clause that would allow some prisoners to vote. And I think that he said, or else we will be exposed to very, very heavy, now I can't remember whether he said payments or fines,
Right.
but prisoners could then quite legitimately use the ruling from the court, and the government would have to pay out.
Yes,
And it was actually a
absolutely.
very, very reasoned and reasonable delivery. And
I've read that too, yes, and it was very reasoned. And, you know, if we say no to any prisoners, it plays into the hands of John Hurst and all these law cases. Whereas if even a slight movement is made, as I said, or, you know, prisoners of 6 months, or we'll leave it up to, you know, judicial decision with a strong recommendation that this is always automatically, then, you know, it undermines the case, but is likely to lead to huge compensation. And claims and appeals to by individuals to Strasbourg.
So the penalties, in fact, will come from the prisoners being awarded costs against the government. The British
Certainly
government.
that is so.
Pardon?
I said certainly that is so, but I'm not sure whether I
There might be a
also
fine
heard
as well.
him talk about fines. I just can't remember, but there's quite a bit about the financial implications and how that would play with
But there wasn't a suggestion that the British government could be fined for not passing the law.
I don't
Was
know.
there?
I don't know.
Oh,
I think there might be. I
Right.
need to find the relevant sheet, which I will look for in a minute.
Is that the usual way they would try and use anything against a government that hasn't complied with laws? Is it usually fines? The European courts?
I think so, yes, in theory. In theory, yes. Yeah. I need to find a sheet on here, which I didn't run off for you. I thought about it and then didn't. So I will find that and check. So this is a big issue, and it is controversial, very controversial. You know, a lot of debate about it. Yeah, and even in Amnesty we will disagree. But it's this confrontation that worries me, and the misinformation. I mean, on that sheet I've handed round, you know, some will simply talk about giving the likes of mass murderers the vote, and can this be right? And others, I mean, I think the Guardian one actually does quote, you know, all the countries that, not entirely accurately, I think, or it contradicts itself, I think. Yes, other countries. So there are some other countries which automatically do it, so we're not the only ones. And yes, it's not true that all 27 EU member states have no restrictions on prisoners voting. I've got a list somewhere. That is not true.
Well, no, it's 40% of the countries of the council have no restrictions.
Oh yes, okay, yes, that's right, I misread it. Yes,
Yeah.
you are right, that's right. Yes, so France, Germany and the Netherlands, loss of voting rights, additional punishment. Sweden, Switzerland and Denmark have no ban at all, but others are really very restrictive in giving any votes, you know, and that is possible. Okay, I want you to think, there you are on a stall in Norwich somewhere, as in fact you have been recently, and you have this banner that says something about human rights. What sorts of things are people likely to say to you if they want to complain about human rights or say you shouldn't be there championing human rights?
They'll probably talk about having hand slogans. That's the most topical one, isn't it? That's been in the news a lot.
Yes, avocado, I think that is incredibly difficult. I have some stuff here on avocado, but it's a bit out of date, and I didn't have the time to trawl through and get the latest. I think that is incredibly difficult.
I'm sure people will come up with that.
I'm sure they will, and it is so hard to argue against. Though there is still some misinformation about it. I mean, why is it that he's not being sent back yet, still?
This would be in danger in Jordan. of not getting a fair trial and being tortured.
That's
Yes,
amazing,
actually,
yeah.
yes. In fact, they have got
Evidence
so
based
close.
on torture, isn't it?
It's evidence based on torture. And in fact, they've got assurances from the Jordanian government, but there is some clause in Jordanian law that might technically allow evidence extracted on torture to be admitted. And I don't know, but I have heard, and I hope that this is going to be the way out, that actually, you know, relations between Jordan and the UK, not bad at all, and that they will make this slight amendment that will make it possible. So it is on a
Why have they
technicality.
gone on that and not the fact that he might be tortured when he gets
Because they don't think, nobody thinks he's going to be tortured, actually.
The
And in-
Jordanians have said
But
they
he
won't,
just might.
they won't
Yes.
torture.
So-
He just might be tortured, right?
Well,
There's a sort of cheat.
Yes, but I don't think it was that. And in fact,
Oh,
this was a UK court that said that he could not go back. And they even said, well, actually, we think he probably would get a fair trial over there. But because of this possibility of evidence being brought forward, extraction under torture, therefore we can't say. So it is so technical. And we are so nearly there. And it does. I mean, this has gone on for years and years and years. And of course, all the expense of it and the surveillance that he's put on.
And the other thing in this particular case is that he has been under a control order and held in Belmarsh for
Yes.
8-9 years. And if there was a case against him,
Yes.
under British law, he should have been
Tried.
brought and tried in this country. And that would have,
Yes.
in a sense, eliminated the question we've got now, which is, why hasn't he gone to Jordan?
Yes.
Um,
And yet
because
they were
he,
sidestepping it by saying, okay, we'll send him back to Jordan. I
yes,
think.
and no government has seen fit to mount a case, I don't know,
Yes.
mount a case against him.
Yeah.
And therefore, technically, he should be free.
Yes. Yes, I've heard that columnists saying that, you know, MI5 is actually to blame because they haven't gathered the evidence or are not brave enough to put forward the evidence for him to have to be tried here.
And under the Security and Justice Bill, if it goes through, that will even complicate it even further because, of course, there is no public way of seeing any evidence,
Yeah.
as I understand it. And
Is it a security issue then? Is that the reason why he hasn't been brought to trial? Because
well,
they couldn't be sure that the...
I don't know,
No, right.
but I'm just posing the question that if he's being held as a dangerous person, that, you know, under the law, technically, he should have been accused of something and brought to a court of law and faced his charge in a fair trial, as we would all wish it. But that hasn't happened. And he's been held under control order with 5 or 6 other people for many years, or whatever its equivalent is now, and not brought to trial. Now that seems to me to be a bad thing.
Definitely. And I think in Amnesty we would agree with that. But I think that, you know, on the street, I think Abbey Qatada, we're really going to struggle to win that one. So I think, well, there are unfortunate exceptions, but they're getting on to other things. What other cases, or what else do you think people are more likely to say?
I think people might say, you know, we've had a system which has worked pretty well, where we have, as it were, negative rights, don't we? I mean, there's negative rights and positive rights. We have, you know, we're allowed to do what we like unless the law says we can't.
Yes.
Whereas the Human Rights Act says this is what you're allowed to do, so you have positive rights. And I think people might say, what's wrong with the system which we had before? And I think that's a fair question, isn't it? I mean, are we better? You know, are people better off in England with the Human Rights Act?
I would probably say, looking at some of those, newspaper articles and the way that feeling is whipped up and the way things could change here. We are more secure in solidarity with other countries and principles. Is probably.
Well, I mean, I think I was thinking what I was getting at was that if we were going to sort of refute that argument, we should have cases where we can say, well, under the old system, this wouldn't have happened, but because this guy or lady, was able to go to Strasbourg, something good happened, which was self-evidently right.
Absolutely, and I have my final handout is some good news cases. This was enabled by the Human Rights Act, and I think that's what we need to do. But on one side here, I've just got myths about the Human Rights Act. This is the sort of people say, it ignores the victims, it protects prisoners, it protects offenders and not victims. People seem to have a human right to anything. Europe has forced it on us while it was voted here. Benefits criminals and illegal immigrants. So, I don't know, I mean, we could debate those, but I do have some Amnesty suggested answers to that.
You have what, sorry?
Amnesty suggested answers to that. I mean, this is, before you go on your street saying, well, actually, yes. The sorts of things people are likely to say. And then I do have some good news stories, things where, things that we would all agree with were a good thing. Like, there's one case here, the health service of some parents who are not being allowed to, their child was going to have an operation in hospital and the parents weren't allowed to stay with the child. The case was brought that actually, that should be allowed in the future. Parents should be allowed to stay with a 5-year-old child when they're facing something like that. And the other thing, I think, is that we have the Human Rights Act, and we hear about the cases, and we hear about the exceptions, and we hear about the people complaining and so on. But actually, our institutions have to comply with the Human Rights Act. And so for every one case where there's a complaint, there are procedures in all these public bodies that are checked and made to comply with the Human Rights Act so that the way they operate is with human rights in mind. All these public bodies have to check that they are taking account of human rights. So it's an automatic check to put good procedures in place. And sometimes a test case goes and procedures change, often test cases go and fail. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. The rest is just a way of incorporating human rights into all kinds of procedures.
There's a sort of argument there, isn't there, that when you say about some people say, well, we should be looking at responsibilities. Do you think of that in a positive way? And I know we had a human rights at UEA last year. We had a series of human rights lectures, and one of the speakers there said that perhaps we should be focusing less on rights and look less on the victims, but more on, well, perpetrators, for want of a better word, but perhaps the public bodies or whoever's in charge, that they have a responsibility to do something, rather than the sort of emphasis on, it's a sort of negative emphasis on.
Well, I think that's what the Human Rights Act does. It imposes that responsibility on all these to protect. It's a responsibility to protect. That's what it's really about.
But it sort of comes across a bit as, until somebody complains, it's not flagged up, whereas it really, it would be better if it was loaded the other way, that organisations and public bodies have a responsibility to protect people.
Well, I think it does that, but we hear about the court and the cases where it hasn't happened. But I think it does impose a responsibility on them. I mean, that's what signing up and having the Human Rights Act actually has done for us, I suppose. Recognising that responsibility, and then when it's broken or not observed, then you get the
I suppose,
court cases
you
and so
tend
on.
to hear the
Yeah,
results
yeah,
when
right,
it
yes.
going, when it's going on.
Absolutely.
There are other positive things. I mean, things like equal pension rights for women
Yes.
was, I think, very important. Something like the whole issue of euthanasia, and I've forgotten the woman's name now, trying to protect her husband
Yes.
from imprisonment if he was implicated in her death. I mean, they're civil issues as opposed to legal ones in a way, aren't they? And I think they tend to be more positive than giving. If we're looking for the positives, instead of just saying prisoners should or shouldn't get, that's a very emotive thing.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the other things are perhaps less emotive and more understandable. If you told people that, you know, equal rights in their pension rights for women, would people say, well, yes, of course.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
So that's a very positive thing.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
as I understand it, it came out of this legislation. It was almost one of the first things that was challenged under the Human Rights Act. So I think those are the positives that, you know, we
And there are
might
lots of
mention.
quality things, like, you know, for disability as well. I don't know if there was it a File on 4 radio programme about, you know, do not resuscitate on, you know, in hospitals for mentally handicapped people. You know, and that has been a big issue. Yeah, actually happening in practice, not as a policy, but, you know, and there's been a big fuss about that and so on, and that all comes under this heading as well.
Sarah, we're going to run out of time.
That's fine. I
Do you want to
have.
say any more?
Actually, can I just give you, if I can find it, can I give you a quotation? And I'll give you the positive cases. I'll leave you all this because, you know, keep prepared. Somewhere I have a wonderful quotation, which I hope I can find. But do start to rearrange, and Lisbeth, you should take over while I find it. What the quotation is, actually, even if I can't find it, I can tell you what it's about. It's from someone from Egypt saying, I hear that, you know, you're challenging human rights and saying that, well, this is all about, of course, the Bill of Rights, when the idea of cancelling the Human Rights Act, and well, we'll just do our own thing with our Bill of Rights, and sort of saying, no, we're not going to sign up to the European Court of Human Rights anymore, we're not going to have, we're going to repeal the Human Rights Act, and we're just going to do our own thing. And this person from Egypt, you know, in turmoil, saying, I think I actually attached it here. No, I didn't. Saying, you know, please, do you realise what message this is sending out? We who are struggling to get our basic human rights need you not to be negative about human rights. And, you know, please don't send out that negative message because we are struggling to get, you know, basic human rights in place. And, you know, human rights are important. Please don't.
There's also, I think, a really big argument to be made against the idea of a national Bill of Rights, which is, you know, that's got to come through Parliament. Or would you like a Bill of Rights drawn up by a Conservative government? Or would you like one drawn up by a Labour government?
Or a coalition.
Or a coalition? I can't bring myself to say the word.
Bringing it into the world of politics. The other quotation that I had, which I wasn't necessarily going to give, but actually was by David Howarth. Now, David Howarth, who used to be our Cambridge MP, great, brilliant lawyer, academic, and champion of human rights. And he said, you know, he was saying that, you know, it just shouldn't be political. Politics shouldn't be brought into it. And the saddest thing, I always remember when he came to talk to our group, and he only stayed one term, didn't he? He got so frustrated, you know, he had ideals and champion of human rights, but he got so frustrated with the whole politics of it that he left politics saying, I can do things better outside. You can't. Yeah. it's a minefield.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
If I'd been
And
doing
so
my
I
job
think
properly,
so,
I
yes.
would have introduced Sarah
Oh.
before she started the talk. I'm so sorry. However, let me say, introduce Sarah Oliver from the Cambridge Group
Right.
and say how grateful we are to you for coming and for leading a really fascinating discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay, well,
indeed.
thanks a lot.